So it's Brighton again then for Liverpool. After a 3-2 victory over the Seagulls in the League Cup at the Amex Stadium in midweek, the Reds facing the same opposition, this time at Anfield in the Premier League this weekend. And as per usual, we've been hearing from Arne Slot at his press conference ahead of the game, and I was there at the AXA Training Centre to see what the Dutchman had to say. And as usual, I'll start with the team news, always the most interesting part of the press conference, to see where the squad is up to, and only a couple of updates this time around on a few players. He was asked about Diogo, Jota and Alisson Becker. Of course, we heard in the last press conference that they were going to be out until after the November international break, but he was asked for any kind of further updates. Is it going to be directly after the international break we see them? Will it be a little bit longer after that? And really he was a bit coy on that one, to be honest. He started the quote with, it's difficult to tell you exactly when. He said that the last few days of a recovery can be a few extra days or it can be a few less, so it's kind of hard to say, but he didn't want to give any concrete answers really on when either player will be back. I guess the hope is that they'll both be back right after the international break and they'll do some training in that period to get themselves ready. But we will have to see. As I say, he was a little bit coy on that one, but fingers crossed we get good news on them both. But we do know now is an absolute fact that neither will be back before the November international break. So 3 more games to go at the very least until we see either Diogo, Jota or Alisson. And of course, Arne Slot was also asked about Federico, Chiesa. He said in his last press conference that the Italian's kind of struggling with the intensity a little bit after not having a full pre-season, adapting to that Premier League intensity that is not just in the games but also, of course, it is in training as well. He's struggling, he's missing a few sessions because of that, and battling those issues. So he's asked about him again and what his chances are of playing any time soon. And again, he said with Chiesa, it's very unlikely we'll see him before the international break. So looks like he's going to miss these next 3 games, and the idea is that he's going to do some training in that period, in that international break. Won't, of course, go away with Italy, very unlikely to get called up, and the idea is that he does some training in that period and then they can get him fully fit, and hopefully after the November international break, as I say, Slot with a little bit more concrete on this one, that Chiesa could be available then and straight back into the squad. So let's hope he can come through that period, build up that fitness and have a really strong finish to the season, because it's been a bit of a bitty start to his Liverpool career, hasn't it? A bit frustrating that we haven't seen much of him, but hopefully we're getting to the end of that now and he's really being built up to be ready for the remainder of the campaign. So we'll see how that plays out now. Of course, after team news, the next issue that we always talk about in these press conference videos is the contracts. Trent Alexander-Arnold, Mohamed Salah and Virgil van Dijk coming to the end of their contracts at the end of the season, and of course Arne Slot was asked about that yet again, and asked if at what point does it start to become a distraction for these players and become difficult dealing with the fact that their futures are so up in the air and yet they've got to concentrate on the football. And he said, for me, contracts only become a problem if the players don't perform as good as they are at the moment. All 3 are in a good place. There are ongoing discussions. So I think maybe the first time we've heard from Slot actually confirmation that discussions are ongoing. Obviously, we've heard that from Virgil van Dijk himself previously. We knew that was the case. I've spoke to him in the mix zone before and he's told us that. But confirmation from the manager that talks with all 3 players are ongoing. So I think that's, you've got to take that maybe as an encouraging step. Obviously, we want those talks to be done. We want deals being done. We want Trent Alexander-Arnold tied down, Van Dijk, Salah the same. But the fact that those discussions are ongoing at the moment, while there's not a contract there and sorted, that's the best we can hope for. So they are working through that, and let's see if we get any updates in terms of whether we can get any of those contracts over the line and get anything signed. Let's hope there's movement on that soon. But the manager's not giving too much away as ever, apart from the fact that those discussions are taking place at the moment. Now, another big talking point this week is Jarell Quansah. There's been a bit of furore of the fact he was brought off in the 89th minute at Brighton. Obviously, he had a hand in one Brighton goal. Another one then deflected in off him, and he was withdrawn in the 89th minute, swapped out for Canate to see out the game. And obviously, been a bit of fuss about that on the basis that, doesn't look great, does it, to be dragging a defender off that late in the game? It's almost like you're blaming him and worrying that you won't see the game out if he stays on the pitch. But Slot was kind of quite measured about when he was talking about it today. I thought really, good to Jarell Quansah in his words. He wasn't sort of throwing him under a bus by any means, which has been the suggestion with that substitution. And he said that he felt that Quansah played a very good game at Brighton, but he said at the moment it just feels like he's in one of those moments where if he makes any little mistake it kind of ends up in a goal. He's in an unlucky moment really, and he said he also felt that he got very unlucky with the deflection that happened. But he was very keen to state that, this guy's going to play a lot of football under me. I've got big faith in him. So, he seemed very happy with Quansah. And he said that he felt that his performance at Brighton was very good. But as I say, he just feels he's in a bit of an unlucky moment currently, and that he's just got to play his way out of that, and it will work itself out. But he's no doubts whatsoever about Quansah's quality, and is absolutely convinced that he's going to be a big player for him. And I'm convinced of that as well. I mean, there's no doubt, if Liverpool don't get any injuries, I think he will absolutely play that game against Southampton in the League Cup next time. And hopefully his luck has turned a little bit. The ball doesn't start to just deflect in off him. If he gets a moment where he makes a mistake, he can get covered off by either him or his teammates. So just needs his luck to turn a little bit, hopefully, and that's what the manager thinks anyway. But very, very convinced that Quansah's a top player who's going to play a lot of football for him this season. And another talking point from that Brighton game, or the last Brighton game before this one, was the fact that Andy Robertson started at left back with Kostas Tsimikas rested, seemingly to bring him into the Premier League side in this one. Now that felt like a bit of a judgment on both players' form. I thought Robertson struggled against Arsenal. I thought he struggled against Brighton as well, to be honest, and it felt like maybe Slot's showing that his first choice at the moment is going to be Kostas Tsimikas, because he was being rested with one eye on him coming into the Premier League team this weekend. But Slot wasn't that definitive on it when asked about it. He said, one of the big problems that Robertson's had, and one of the reasons he's had to rotate so much at left back, is because Robertson's pre-season was so curtailed. Really, he came in, didn't he, after the Euros? He was injured, and then basically Slot said, everybody else got around 2 weeks pre-season, which isn't ideal. But he said Robertson only really got a few days, so he's really having to look after him and protect him, and that's why there's so much rotation going on at the moment. He said it was good for him actually to get back-to-back games, to go to Arsenal and then go to Brighton and be able to play almost the full games in those, or get good chunks of minutes, because that will help him build up his fitness, which really is the aim at the moment, to get him sharp. And he didn't really sort of reflect on Robertson's performance levels and say that the fact that he's had no pre-season is the reason why he's struggling at the moment. He didn't really get into the fact that Robertson is struggling at the moment, or he is, in my opinion anyway. But it's an interesting one that he feels that that's a reason he's had to physically protect him. And you do wonder whether that shortfall in pre-season is a factor in Robertson not quite looking at his best at the moment. And I guess the true measure as well, in terms of whether Slot is made a change there and he has Tsimikas down as his first choice, is not just what happens against Brighton at the weekend, but what happens in the games after that. Of course, it's Bayer Leverkusen and then Aston Villa back-to-back before the international break, and it could just be the case that Tsimikas is going to play this one against Brighton, and then we see Robertson back-to-back in those games. So that would give us a show really that Robertson is still Arne Slot's first choice. So I don't think the fact that Tsimikas looks very, very likely to start against Brighton is decisive. I think a lot will depend on what kind of happens after that. So I'm going to wrap up the press conference review there. Please do let me know what you think about the big talking points from today. The team news, obviously a couple of blows there. Contracts is ever a big discussion point. And Quansah and Andy Robertson as well, what you're thinking about their form and the role that they're going to play this season. Always interested to hear your thoughts. And if you can drop a like on the video, always hugely appreciated. And please do subscribe if you've just found this channel as well. Keep banging on about the fact it's past 20,000 subscribers, and I will keep banging on about it because I can't believe it really. So thank you to everyone for that again. And of course, I will be at Anfield this weekend, tomorrow actually, to cover the game. And of course, I'll be on for my post-match thoughts as well. So I'll see you guys then.